স্যার
15টা করে সেভিংস অ্যাকাউন্ট পাঠিয়েছি, 5টা খুলছে কেন? আমাকে কি ভেবেছিস? সি ভেবেছিস? কি ভেবেছিস আমাকে?
78 dispatch করে দিয়েছি।
This is a video of a senior official at HDFC yelling at his junior for not meeting his weekly target. And this is a video of a Gurugram-based edtech firm in which employees were reportedly locked in to prevent them from leaving the premises without permission. Both these videos went viral recently, starting a huge conversation about toxic workspaces in India. Several people pointed out that while these two cases gained traction because they were caught on video, toxic work culture in companies is not new. According to a survey by a staffing firm called Genius Consultants, nearly 50% of those born either in or after the 90s say that toxic work culture is the main reason for quiet quitting. According to another study by Flex Jobs, over a quarter of the people who leave their jobs or want to leave their jobs do so due to toxicity at the workplace. For many who worked in corporate environments, this is not news. In fact, it's probably an accepted normal. According to a study by the McKinsey Health Institute, 4 of the 10 employees working in India Inc. have high levels of burnout and anxiety as a ripple effect of working in a toxic environment. But we can't all just leave our jobs, right? There are many reasons why employees may not just be able to quit even if their work environment is bad. It could be EMIs, they could be the sole earning members, or maybe they're in a government job where it's much harder to switch your position or your city or work under somebody else, even if your supervisor is someone who can be called a toxic boss. So in this situation, what can you do? Well, we've spoken to some experts, both those who are involved in the job market as well as those who are involved in the field of mental health, which may help you get an insight into identifying a toxic workplace as well as dealing with it. So first of all, let's take a look at what are the 4 red flags of a toxic workplace. Well, the first is, of course, as we saw in the video, an abusive or overly critical manager. A person who shouts, abuses, uses crass words, or only pushes their expectations without listening to your point of view or giving space for your creative freedom. That person is definitely a toxic boss. The second is that your manager expects you to always prioritize work over everything else, no matter what the situation. Working overtime frequently, being discouraged from taking sick leave, or not being given any personal space or boundaries even after work hours on a regular basis is one more red flag. The third, our expert says, is extended Monday blues. While it's understandable that you may not really want to get back to work after a fun weekend, but if the reluctance is so much that it actually makes you uncomfortable, that is not a healthy relationship with work. In fact, this can have physical manifestations as well.
If you dread a Monday morning and if you go through those Monday morning blues and heart attacks, that's a sign that this is not a comfortable place for you. A lot of your psychosomatic ailments will start getting triggered if you are constantly working in a very, very high stress environment. If you were not hypertensive, but now you go to the doctor and the doctor says that, keep an eye on yourself because your blood pressure is now coming up, kind of. If you're frequently having headaches, if you are allergy prone and if your allergies are beginning to flare up. One typical area that starts acting up under stress is your stomach. And if you feel that you're constantly having these stomach issues, don't just think that it is the water or it's the weather or it's something wrong with the environment. Sit down and take a look. These bunch of symptoms are also an indicator of a lot of stress that is prevalent in you and that is not being managed.
And the fourth is if your team is constantly struggling to retain people. Regular attrition and hiring is of course part of the work cycle, but if multiple people have resigned, it could be a red flag. So now that you've identified whether or not your work environment is toxic, what are some things that you can do about it? First is set boundaries. You have to make clear when you will and will not be available and how much workload you are willing to take on. For example, if there's a review meeting at a time when you're not available, just ask if it could be shifted to a more conducive time. You can be honest about it. Secondly, practice self-care. Sleep, eat, exercise, take breaks when required.
Find a way to make sure that you at least get 6 hours of sleep. I would have said 8 hours, But obviously, if you are overworked, you don't have that 8 hours of sleep. And therefore, I will say at least give yourself 6 hours of sleep. If you don't do that, you are coming back to work tomorrow much worse than you left today. Exercise could be one way to give yourself a little detox, at least 30 minutes, not too much. Go for a walk. One of the things that happens often when you're working very hard is you have no timings about your meals. Don't miss your meals. Try and maintain the timing as much as possible.
Focus on what you can control, like your own behavior and reactions. Focus on your goals and think about how you can go ahead and achieve them. And if it gets too much, if the toxicity is hampering your growth, raise the issue.
The most important thing is that they need to discuss this with the right people. HR is one of the panel where they can discuss these things. In a lot of organization, there is one committee formed related to these matter where these people can discuss directly. Or whenever the one-on-one session happens in the organization, there they can discuss these things.
And lastly, if your organization still doesn't do anything about it, it's time to plan your exit. You don't necessarily have to leave immediately, but you should start exploring other avenues because continuously being in a toxic work environment is obviously not a sustainable option. Well, hope this video gave you some insights and solutions. For more such content, keep following Money Control.